Mr. Lofton, recap from our lesson the other day. Started off with some setup cues for you. This face-on view here on the right. Feet were a little bit too wide for my preference, a little bit too far outside of the shoulders. So we narrowed those up a smidge to start and got you to stand just a little bit taller at address. So let me pull up the new face on over here. So those feet are much better to me there on the left. Just play this through. So a lot of good in the golf swing. So after we got this stance narrowed up, what we did, we talked about keeping some pressure over this left foot by keeping kind of the left knee or the left leg flexed, going towards the toe or the balls of that feet instead of kicking in as it did here previously. So that kept you a little bit more centered, and I know part of that has to do with narrowing up the base. That allowed you to return it a little bit more on top of the ball. We actually started to take some divots from there, which was something you hadn't done in a little while. Then the other thing we talked about, as you go through the ball, you kind of get what we call secondary tilt. As you're going through, you start to kick that pelvis forward and start leaning back more and more as we go through the golf ball. Now I think that was just a result of setup and a condition of the face. I'll show you in the down the line view, but that face tends to be a little bit strong, which we talked about. So we did clean up that look a little bit. So in the down the line view, you can see at the top of the backswing, so it's kind of hard to see with the sun, but that club face is right about there, so almost parallel with the ground. Ideally it matches or is closer to your arm plane, so that would be a closed club face. So you have a tendency to kind of hit some left, which is I think why you were scared of hitting down on it and turning in front of it, so to speak. But honestly, there's a lot of good with that strong face. Even though we had some inconsistent contact. Wasn't too afraid of that. I mean, we talked a little bit about the grip, maybe weakening the left hand just a smidge, getting that line not pointed so far towards your trail shoulder, maybe a little bit more towards your sternum. But to get a feeling of turning ahead of the club and not having to add that secondary tilt, I know this is kind of a weird drill, but we hit some golf balls with the driver off of your knees, so it's a lot harder to add that tilt going through the ball. And if you do, most of the time you would bottom out behind it, and we did that a couple times. You surprised me at first. You hit a bunch of them good, but the more we did it, there were a couple that you would hit behind it, which just meant that we were adding that tilt. So that there is way different than what we looked like. So we got a feel for this and just transferred that to the full swing. So I think that's a good drill for you to do. As long as you narrow up the stance, that's kind of number one. Maybe monitor that grip, don't get it so strong. And don't be afraid to hit down on it. So if you got any questions, feel free to reach out.